What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Have you ever wondered why MERP didn't have more metal? Or perhaps Dragonlance wasn't more deadly? AD&D not got enough tables for you? Curious yet? Well, the game I'm going to talk about today does all of those things. So if that sounds like your kind of game, buckle up. You're in for a really sweet ride against the Darkmaster. If you are enjoying the content and you want to see more, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. As a reminder, my content is not paid promotion, and I rarely receive review copies. So if you want to contribute financially, consider a membership, which also provides exclusive channel privileges. Last but not least, if you are wanting to expand your gaming horizons with a group of the finest gamers in the hobby,
even you couldn't say no to that.
Check out the Discord for discussion, free content, and occasional play-by-post games. Link in the description. History of the game. To tell the history of Against the Darkmaster, oddly abbreviated as VSD, you really have to tell the history of the games that inspired it. I say inspired as it is not a true retro clone as I understand. Against the Darkmaster is heavily based upon Iron Crown Enterprises' Rolemaster and more closely upon its streamlined Middle-earth role-playing. But it has continued to innovate and develop its own identity, unique from both. Rolemaster was initially released in 1980 with the Arms Law book as a competitor to D&D, but using a D100 Universal Resolution system instead of the common D20. The game saw several additions over the years and remains available today as the Rolemaster Unified system. The game is known by its detractors for its reliance upon special tables for all manner of activities, from swinging a sword to casting a spell, everything with its own table for resolution, criticals, and failures. While there is a reliance on tables, fans will say that this creates a more evocative and curated experience, helping better visualize the action by describing the results. In 1984, ICE managed to pull an industry coup by acquiring the rights to the IP that inspired the whole hobby with its Middle-earth role-playing game. This added options to build heroes hearkening to the members of the Fellowship and beyond. Of interest to me as a lad was the enormous list of character races which dwarfed,
which is of course ridiculous,
the TSR offerings at the time. Moreover, it added rules for making members of the races deemed GM only in other games. That orange box sat on my shelf for years and was unfortunately still there when my parents' home burned several years back. While I never got beyond building some characters, I understand that the system was streamlined from Rolemaster proper, reducing a number of skills and options, probably to appeal to Tolkien fans new to the role-playing hobby. In 2016, Open-Ended Games, so named for the exploding dice system that they use, released the original iteration of Against the Darkmaster, which is closest to MERP, but still not a retro clone, with significant changes to attributes, options, and of course IP. As I understand, I am only familiar with VSD, not the preceding games. The game has went through revision, and its current voluminous core rules tome sits at over 560 pages in length.
Whoa, this is heavy.
They've also released a campaign setting titled Secrets of the Golden Throne, based loosely upon Arthurian legend. The game has a small but devoted fan base whom enjoy the system's heavy metal aesthetic as much as its fantastic resolution system. Mechanics. To know if this game is right for you, you need to know how it plays, which in this case is doubly important as there is only a loosely implied setting and because the mechanics are very different from what most gamers are familiar with. As for the setting, the most important through line is the existence of an ultimate bad guy threatening the existence of the world, or at the very least, the part of the world that the characters care about. Thematically, it could cover Tolkien, Martin, Lieber, Howard, or your favorite sword and sorcery author, but you will need to establish who or what the Darkmaster figure will be. Some examples from literature could be Sauron from Lord of the Rings, Takhisis from the Dragonlance Chronicles, or the Night King from George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. The core of the game relies upon its open-ended D100 roll system. Essentially, you roll a D100, add your mods for stat, skill, and gear, and then try to hit 100 plus for a success. 5 to 74 is a failure, 75 to 99 is a partial success, 175 plus is an outstanding success, and 4 or less is a critical failure.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Most rolls are open-ended, which equates to exploding dice in other systems. Players rolling a 96 plus naturally will roll again, adding the result to the prior roll, continuing until they roll 95 or less. Rolling a 5 or less works similar, rolling again and subtracting from the prior result, again continuing to roll until they roll a 95 or less.
That ain't the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life.
This gives the game a shadow of possibility on every roll, and when combined with the extensive combat tables and critical tables, leaves the ever-present possibility of one-hit kills in most situations. With non-combat tasks, it leaves the tempting possibility of success against all odds. Probably the best way to truly convey the system's strengths is by following the character creation steps, which I will walk through now, before creating a character of my own a little later. Characters start with their stats, being brawn, swiftness, fortitude, wits, wisdom, and bearing. All seem pretty straightforward except bearing, which is a measure of personality and strength of will. Stats can be randomly generated or by using a point-buy system. They range between -20 and +35 at this step of creation and are added to any rolls for skills associated with the stat. Next, players choose from one of 13 kin with all the standards there, but also some unique options. GMs may choose to disallow kin not suited to their games, but the list is already impressive and only made more so with the later culture choices. Kin adds stat mods, hit point bonuses, magic point bonuses, saving roll changes, background points for customizing characters like feats, and wealth level. Kin choices are dwarf, halfling, man, wild folk, high man, half-elf, dusk elf, silver elf, star elf, half-orc, orc, stone troll, and firbolg. Plenty of great choices to keep players satisfied. Next, players choose a culture, which in most games would be part of the kin, but here allows for men raised by dwarves or all manner of other creations. Culture gives bonus ranks and relevant skills that a character would have learned growing up in that specific society. Culture also determines base wealth level. Culture choices are Arctic, City, Deep, Desert, Fey, Hill, Marauding, Noble, Pastoral, Plains, Seafaring, Weald, and Woad. Kin have suggested cultures, but nothing stops you from having a noble orc. Vocations are up next, and they are essentially classes, but not as restrictive. Each vocation gives a number of build points at each level to invest in skills with more points in areas relevant to the job. This allows players a great amount of control over how the particular rogue that they built compares to another. Available vocations are Warrior, Rogue, Wizard, Animist, Dabbler, and Champion. Each has a different focus, with Wizard, Animist, Dabbler, and Champion all having some degree of magical ability. Background points granted by the kin selection allow players to choose from multiple levels and flavors of 40 different background options, giving characters that unique flair of our favorite heroes from fiction. Want a pet bear or the ability to shape change? This is where you'll find it. At the end of the character creation section, you'll determine derived stats based upon prior choices. These are move rate, defense, save rolls, hit points, and magic points. You'll select some equipment, and then you get to a unique inclusion to the game: passions and drive. Passions are chosen to show what motivates a character, while drive points are rewards for playing to that passion. Drive points can be spent to modify dice rolls or change some outcomes in the game. Interestingly, the book has a table suggesting passions based upon heavy metal songs, which was a welcome addition. Having covered what makes up a character, it seems prudent to cover how they perform in combat. Starting with initiative, things work a bit different than your average D20 game. Action plays out in the order of phases, with movement, then prepared range, then melee, then unprepared range. There is a lot more to it than that, but for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to convey the idea that it is not a simple roll a die initiative. A cool detail for Gygaxian raised polearm enthusiasts like myself, longer melee weapons act before shorter weapons in most cases. Types of actions are broken into full, half, and free actions. Individuals can do a full action plus a half action, or 2 half actions each round, though they take a penalty on rolls if they do more than one action. Attacks are made by rolling an open-ended D100 roll, adding combat modifier, and subtracting your opponent's defense. In Melee, players can sacrifice combat modifier points to enhance their defense, called parrying. Those using a shield can also parry spells or ranged attacks. If the final result is in the weapon's clumsy range, the attack is a fumble, which requires a roll on the fumble table appropriate to that weapon. The game has specific combat options to make combat feel accurate and definitely gritty. An unusual choice as compared to more traditional fare, weapons don't directly determine damage, though they do limit how high up the results table you may go. There are specific combat tables for edged, blunt, missile, unarmed, area spells, bolt spells, and beast attacks, and critical tables for beast, impact, cut, pierce, grapple, fire, lightning, frost, and dark magic attacks. With that much variety, you will rarely see the same result twice, and you won't want to place your tables too far from your reach. The magic system is very different than most, and allowing success on a 51 plus from the open-ended roll different from the other resolutions. Spells are broken into spell lores, each providing a unique effect for each weave ranked 1 to 10. Casters learn each new weave spell when they increase their skill rank in that particular spell lore, and they have the option to warp spells to a higher weave to increase their effects. Spells cost magic points, limiting castings, but worse, they create resonance, which may draw the attention of the Darkmaster. There is also a spell failure table, which can create additional complications for casters. The Darkmaster is, of course, the big bad of your game, and while you do create them, they aren't statted. As anyone who played with AD&D deities and demigods knows, if it has stats, it can die.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
No, the Darkmaster is defined in more interesting ways. Its symbol, goals, fortress, servants, and more important, the artifact that's going to be needed to defeat it. There are some samples in the book as well as rules for making your own, and as a storytelling device, it doesn't get better than this. One could easily create Sauron using these rules, which just feels right given the game's roots. The core book has 59 pages of your favorite monsters, which will be recognizable to most fantasy fans upon a quick glance. You've got Draconians from the Dragonlance series, Ents from Lord of the Rings, and many more recognizable monsters to add to your own games. The stat blocks are simple enough and the combat tactics and special abilities detailed enough to depict your favorite combats in some level of detail. Considering the civilized kin are statted as NPCs in a different section, this little beast area is a good chunk of the book. Character creation. So right now what I'm going to do is create a character in Against the Darkmaster to show you how that process works. And you can see I've got my book all tabbed up because when you have a book of over 560 pages, you're going to want to be able to quickly find the section that you need. So I'm going to turn to this nice little blue tab that I have marked for character creation. And the first thing that I'm going to need to do is going to generate my stats. So there are different ways to generate your stats. Here in the creating a character section, it says that you can distribute 50 points between your stats in slots of 5 with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 25. So we're going to do that, but they also have methods for rolling random stats as well as an array that you can choose to allocate. So with 50 points, let's see what we can come up with. And 25 is our max, so we're going to put 25 in brawn.
Parley or a fight?
And we're going to put 10 in swiftness, and 15 in fortitude, 0 in wits, 0 in wisdom, and 0 in bearing, because we're going to create a barbarian, as is custom for the channel. Now that we have our stats allocated, we need to choose a kin. To do that, I need to flip to the kin section, and I am going to go with a man. Men get a plus 25 or a plus 5 to their brawn and no other stat changes. They get some other abilities though. I need to mark down that my starting hit points are going to be 30 because I am a man. I also need to mark down that I'm going to get 6 background points. And I get no bonus to my wealth level, so I don't need to mark anything there. I do have a plus 10 to one skill of my choice. So I'm going to write that here to remind me. And there is a section of suggested cultures, but that doesn't mean you have to follow them. It says here for men, the suggested cultures are any but deep, fey, or marauding. Marauding is supposed to be a culture that is for NPCs primarily. So we have our kin chosen. Let's choose our culture. For our culture, I am going to choose Wield, which is kind of on the edges of society, maybe a loosely affiliated tribe, roaming culture, much like the barbarians. So we are going to write down our kin of man, and we're going to write down our culture of Wield. And we get some base ranks in a lot of different skills for our culture. So we are going to go ahead and write down our base ranks here, and then we'll modify them. So and 2 for body. And body is going to wind up being basically your hit points. Now, aside from those free ranks, my culture is also going to provide me with some equipment. So I get to choose one of each. And for my first choice, I get either simple clothing, hunting garbs, or leather armor. So I'm going to take leather armor. My second choice, I get either a hand axe and shield, a short sword and javelin, or a hunting bow and arrows. I'll take the hunting bow and arrows. And then for my third choice, I get either a wineskin and twice baked cakes, fire starting kit, or hunting knife and bundle of pelts. I'm going to take the hunting knife and bundle of pelts. So it really sets me up to be kind of a free range hunter style barbarian character. But I'm also going to get a melee weapon with a later choice that I'm going to make with my background points. Well, that's all kind of the choices that you get for your culture. So then we're going to choose our vocation. And we have the choice of warrior, rogue, wizard, animist, dabbler, and champion. Champion is similar to like a paladin. Animist is going to be a druid or cleric. Dabbler is going to be kind of a sorcerer type, an untrained caster. Rogues and warriors are the only two that don't have any magical ability, and that's what we're going to go with this time. So we're going to go with a warrior, and it shows that you get development points for every level. So as you level up, you get the same amount to increase each time. These development points build ranks of your skills, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But you can only put 2 additional ranks each level from your development points into a single skill. So you can't just dump all 5 of your points into your blade skill every time you level up. It doesn't work that way. But you can get ahead of the curve, so to speak, on your ranks in a specific skill because your kin, or your culture rather, has given you bonus ranks from the start. That doesn't limit your ability to put those initial 2 ranks into any of those skills. So as a warrior, I have 2 development points for armor, 5 for combat, 4 for adventuring, 2 for roguery, 0 for lore, and 2 for body. Now, in addition, I can trade 2 from any one area to gain 1 in another area. So, for example, I could take, well, actually, not even 2 from one area, 2 from anywhere else to gain 1 in another. So I could take a point of roguery and a point of adventuring and gain a point of lore. So I'm losing 1 rank in the process of that, but it gives me the option to be a little bit more well-rounded if I wanted that. So additionally, the different vocations have some bonuses to the actual skill level. This is not the rank, but the total of the skill bonus. So warriors, for example, get a plus 20 to all of their combat skills. So we're going to put a plus 20 right there to all of these. Then they also get a plus 10 to athletics, plus 10 to ride, plus 5 to hunting, plus 5 to nature, plus 5 to wandering. And they get a plus 15 to body. Then we're going to move on to our skills section because we need to spend those points. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So over here on this rank table, it shows that up to rank 10, every rank that you put into a skill gives you 5 skill points. And above 10, every point or every rank that you put in rather gives you 2 skill points up until you reach 20. Then at 21 and above, you only get 1 skill point for each rank. So ranks are related to skill point, but they aren't an exact translation. It curves off. You get lesser gains as you increase your ranks. So let's go ahead and do this. So with the armor, this reduces the penalty that you receive from wearing armor. And armor works very different in this game. Rather than giving a flat damage reduction or making it harder to hit you, the armor in this game actually becomes one of the columns in all of the different combat tables. So the results are much worse for you, no matter the role of your enemy, typically if you are not wearing armor or you're wearing lighter armor. And armor just equates to no armor, light armor, medium armor, or heavy armor. Doesn't really matter the type so much, as accepting that there are some critical results that care about where your armor is placed. So if you're not wearing a helm and you get a critical that affects your head, you may be having a bad day. So I get 2 development points to place into my armor stat. I'm going to raise that to a 3. There is no stat associated with the armor skill, so I don't get any bonus for any of my kin or items or anything like that. So I have a total of 15 to my armor. I have 5 points to spend on combat. I'm going to spend 2 immediately on blades. That's as much as I can spend anywhere. I'll go ahead and spend 2 on ranged as well, which actually brings it to a 3 because I had 1 from my culture. And then I'll have 1 left, and I'll spend that on brawl. Why not? Barbarian. I need to add my appropriate stat to each of these, and we'll do that right here. So brawn is 25. 25. Swiftness is 10. Brawn is 25. And brawn is 25. We may have some additional modifiers here, so I'm not going to bring all of these over just yet. We'll do that at the end. I am going to add my human plus 10 to any 1 to my blades. So already, just looking at this, we have 25 plus 10 is 35, and another 20 is 55, and another 10 is 65. So he is very much going to be a deadly warrior with a blade in his hand. Now I have 4 points in adventuring, so I am going to spend the maximum 2 in hunting, which gives me 5 there. And I am going to spend 1 in athletics. Actually, I'm going to spend 2 in athletics. Why not? We're just going to be pretty narrow in our focus. I have 2 points for roguery. And I really think I want to put 1 into stealth and 1 into acrobatics. Guess I need to transfer my stat bonuses here. So we have no wits bonus, no wisdom bonus, no wisdom bonus. We have plus 10 to swiftness, plus 10 to swiftness. No wits, no wisdom, no wits. I don't have any development points for lore, so I don't add anything there. And I have 2 for my body, so I am going to go ahead and add 2 here, bringing that to 4. And I have fortitude of 15. So unless I add something to this, I am going to have 50 hit points to start the game. That's plus my racial hit points. So 30, so I'll have 80 hit points to start the game. So that's pretty significant. But when you look at the monsters, your average Joe Schmo monsters, they're going to be pretty close to that 80 hit points too. So it's not going to be a pushover. And some of the results are going to have quite high damage results before you ever even get into the critical effects. So definitely different scale than a lot of games you're used to. So we have chosen our vocation. We've got our skills allocated. We've got these cool things called background points. And here are the tables with the different backgrounds. I've got 6 points to choose from, but I think they're going to go pretty fast because I am going to use some to buy some equipment. I told you that I was going to be getting some equipment with one of these background points, and it's actually going to be a combination. So there is one in here that allows us to get some additional equipment geared for adventure. That's it. So for a miner, you can add 2 items with a fare of 2 or less. See the equipment section in the appendix, or 1 fare 3 item to your starting equipment. I flipped to the weapons section right before we started this video here, and the fare was not listed, at least in the equipment section for the weapons. It could be just because the weapon costs are below the scale of what the fare would cover. The wealth system in Against the Darkmaster is not like counting coppers. It is, if you're this rich, you can afford these things. And typically, it's going to stay pretty static. So I'm going to use 1 point of Geared for Adventure just on the chance that a two-handed sword would be one of those more expensive items. And I'm sure it's not going to be 4 wealth levels. So we are going to add that as one of our background points. So that is Geared for Adventure. And that's 1 point of Geared for Adventure. And then we are also going to get Ancient Heirloom, which gives a piece of equipment a +10 magical item modifier to a specific skill. And what we're going to do with that is our blade is going to give a +10 to the blade skill. So he's got this ancestral two-handed sword that gives him a +10 to his blade skill. My assumption is that this has been passed down through his family. It was crafted generations ago, and he has been trained his whole life to use this. So then I have 4 more points left. With that, let's go ahead and do something a little bit different. Let's do a loyal animal companion. And so for 1 point, you gain a loyal small or medium-sized animal of your choosing who travels with you and follows your orders blindly. For 3 points, your companion can be up to large in size, or the bond you have with it strengthened, granting you the ability to communicate with it at a basic level without speaking. So I'm going to go with the major, which is 3 points, and I'm going to give him a bear. Yep, that's a large creature. So he's got a bear companion. So we will write this up here just to remind me that he's got a bear. And then I've got 1 point left, and I'm going to go with mundane, which will give me a point of drive if I don't have one at the beginning of each session. So we'll add a point of drive. You're always going to have that at the beginning of each session. So now we'll go through our finishing touches, and move rate is going to be 15, and let's go ahead and skin is right here. So we've got 20, 30, 50, 80 hit points. So we'll add that to here. We'll just circle in that 3. Got the 80 hit points. And wealth level, I believe that was 1, if I'm not mistaken, for wield. I can change that if I need to. And defense is going to be equal to their swiftness value or 0, whichever is higher. My swiftness value is 10, so I have that going for me. I can also parry, but parrying with a two-handed sword is complicated because it's heavy. I get a bonus to attacking if I'm not parrying, which I lose if I'm parrying. So it creates a big gap there. But I'm going to have to parry because you don't want to get hit in this game. So we've got 10 and 10. Not going to be deducting much from their rolls. I do have leather armor, and I'll have to look up what zones I know I'm not over the swiftness maximum for that armor, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'll get that stuff later. But let's get to the really interesting part. Let's choose our passions. So passions are going to be kind of like a mission statement for your character. If you have ever been in a corporate setting and you've been talking about mission statements endlessly and you just want to poke your eyes out, well, these are a little bit more fun than that. So to give you an idea of some suggestions that they have, they say, let your metal passion drive your character's passion here. So you can come up with your own, but some of the suggestions that they have, uh, I will never hide again. Dio, Stand Up and Shout is the song that inspired that passion. So there's another Dio on here. There's Life's a Never-Ending Wheel, and that's Dio Holy Diver that inspired that one. But anyways, you get the idea. I think I'm actually going to go with I Will Never Hide Again. Perhaps like Conan, my character was young and inexperienced and saw his family die, and he hid, and that's the reason he's alive and they're not. So we're going to just use theirs and go from there. So, and that is, you can either choose a nature, allegiance, or motivation passion. So this is kind of a nature. And I will never hide again. And then for his motivation, I will avenge my tribe. And his allegiance, my allegiance is to myself. And that makes sense because he's traveling with a flippin' bear. Nobody wants to travel with a bear, though if you are on the internet, you'll see that women might choose to travel with the bear over the barbarian, but I think the better choice would be the barbarian. That's just me. So let's go ahead and come up with a name for him. Let's call him Krognar. Bonus points if you know where that reference came from. Mention it in the comments section. I'm level 1, and I'm a warrior. That is character building in a nutshell. I do need to put down my toughness and willpower saving rolls. We'll get those later. Not a big deal there. But you get the idea of where your choices are in the character creation process. And if you'd like to see Krognar go on a solo run sometime, let me know about it in the comments. The good and the bad. First, the good. Number 1, wealth of options. With all of the kin, culture, vocation, and background options, players are going to be at a lack of ability to argue that they can't create the character they want in this system. The different choices that you make, while in a vacuum, a lot of them would seem a little bit inconsequential. But when you add everything up and you look at what you have at the end of the creation process, you're going to have a character that is very tailored to your desired results. And with the fact that you don't have to roll your character, it really does give the players the ultimate choice of how this turns out. I think that it would potentially be easier to make a character that is not going to be effective in a specific campaign because of all these choices. But if you're not min-maxing and you're just playing for fun, I think this system of creation is going to be awesome. Number 2, detailed combats. The various tables for the different types of attacks and the different critical effects and the fumbles, everything about the combat resolution system in this game just screams storytelling. Yes, it does take a little bit longer to resolve at times because you have to have your tables at the ready, which is why I printed those out and put them in the binder. But they do help you to visualize why this strike was different or more or less impactful than the last one. And for a GM or a solo player, that can be a real boon to your table. I think the detailed combats in this seem like they are going to be a ton of fun. Number three, a different take on storytelling, for RPGs at least. Now, the storytelling in Against the Darkmaster feels much less like that of a traditional RPG and much more like your favorite fantasy fiction author. The story revolves primarily around the impact of one big, bad, untouchable evil character, and you are the lowly fellowship trying to eke out a living and maybe one day, against all odds, be able to stand and defeat the big, bad Dark Master, but that is not even on the radar when you start playing this game. You are just at his pleasure. He could kill you anytime, and with that, you have this almost survivalist style of gameplay, and you have to, even if you are a big, powerful warrior, you have to be careful not to draw the attention of the Dark Master. It really feels very much like Weiss and Hickman's Chronicle series, and the way that they're trying to avoid the dragon armies and the ire of Takesis. I really think that this could do a great job telling that story. And I think whenever I play it, it will probably be in Dragonlance. I've kind of looked at my old Tales of the Lands box set, and I think that the hex crawl that's in that uh, probably would be where I started with this game, and Takesis would be my Dark Master. Number four, unified mechanic. The open-ended roll is really cool. Typically, exploding dice are reserved for smaller dice, but to have them on a D100 can create some really insane results and give stories worth retelling for years with your game group. Just playing Savage World and seeing the different exploding dice results where guys rolled a 10 like six times a roll in a row on a D10. That was amazing, and we remember it to this day. And with this, with D100s and needing a 96 or better, you could get some crazy results. And the mechanic is simple. You're almost always trying to hit 100 after all your bonuses. So it's easy to remember. Yes, you need to refer to the tables to get your results, but like for non-combat stuff, you're just trying to get 100 or better, and you kind of know the degree of success because it's got that built into the system. So very much, I like the open-ended roll system. Number five, the opportunity for glory. There is always a chance. Because of the way this system works, you are never completely without hope. And that is something that I talked about last week in the comments section with some of the players that were commenting on Shadows of the Demon Lord. They said that they don't like playing in systems that have no hope of a good outcome. And I kind of agree with them. And I said, I'd throw that out if I was playing Shadows of the Demon Lord. I'd say, yeah, the odds are stacked against you, but there's a chance. Otherwise, what are you fighting for? And so this system has that built in because of the exploding dice, the open-ended rolls, and because of the critical effects. You always have that chance to pierce the great knight through the eye of his visor with your lance. That's always on the table, and that's not in a lot of games. So there's always that opportunity for glory, and glory makes for great stories. As an honorable mention for the good, There's a great quick start document that you can download from DriveThruRPG, and I believe it is either free or pay what you want. It's 110 pages, so it's not a short document, but it's got everything you need to actually try out the game and play it. And it doesn't have all of the options that you'll find in the full 560-page book, but it actually, I used it to kind of break down, okay, what is it that I have to know to be able to play this game before I really dove into the full 560-page book. So that's an honorable mention. Now the bad. Number 1, niche audience. This game is for stat hounds and those that are accounting adjacent. If you have gamers that want something that is going to be low maintenance, simple, not a lot of flipping through tables, they just want something that's rules light, this ain't the game for them. This is going to freak them out, and they're probably going to not let you choose the next game. That said, if you've got an old grognard that loves flipping through the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide and looking at all those tables in awe, then they're going to love this game. Number 2, tables for days. Kind of related to the first, but it does slow down the game a little bit that you have to flip through all the tables, and it is a matter of how you're going to keep those tables close at hand. So the book has them spread throughout. There is a collection of them at the back of the book, which is handy, but if you get the PDF does not allow you to print those tables, which is kind of a bummer. Now, that said, if you get the PDF of the GM screen, it's like 55 pages long, and I was like, wow, that's a little bit odd for a GM screen, but it's because it has basically all of those same tables and they're printable on the screen. It's only like $4 or $5, so not a big deal. But I was surprised that they put printing behind the paywall for the PDF of the tables. This is a 560-page book. People aren't going to be printing their own copies of it very often. So, and even if they wanted to, they could take screenshots and print it that way still. So they're not really stopping anything. I thought that was a bad choice. Number 3, time sink. Developing a campaign setting for this, creating a Darkmaster that is memorable, getting your players on board with the rather complicated to learn but easy to play system, that's going to be a challenge. And you're going to put a lot of time and effort into this one. Whereas, like, for example, when I was learning Shadow of the Demon Lord and Shadow of the Weird Wizard, that process took me, probably a couple weeks to learn. But against the Darkmaster, I have been learning for about 6 weeks for me to have a real level of comfort with the system and to feel like I could run a solid campaign of this. So just plan to put some time into this. Number 4, transportability. The core rulebook being this huge, if you have to travel through dangerous areas, this could be a weapon to protect yourself with. But if otherwise, transporting it is not as easy as most RPGs, because you're still going to need your minis and your dice and your writing utensils and character sheets and all that stuff. And if you're like me, you're probably going to want a separate printing of all the tables, like I showed you earlier. And so it's just a lot. So if you're playing at home and you're always the host as the GM, not a big deal. But if each of your players is going to want their own copy of the full core rules, yikes, that's a lot of space. And they're going to be lugging around a 10-page book, or a 10-pound, 560-page book, rather, each time they come to your house. There are player versions of the books that don't have any of the GM rules, and there's GM versions of the book that don't have the player rules. but those are print on demand and they're hardcover. And I bought one of each off of the internet from Noble Knight, and I've only opened them twice, and they're already falling apart. The glue is already coming loose, and I just cannot deal with a print on demand hardcover with the page counts that these have. Even breaking them into 2 books, they just don't last. Like I said, open them twice and already the pages are starting to fall out. Number 5, learning curve. This is not hard to play, but it's a little bit hard to learn and it's a little bit hard to teach. A lot of that can be attributed to the fact that it's so different than all of the other games that you're used to playing. If you're a Rolemaster veteran or a MERP veteran, this is probably old hat to you. But even coming from somebody that has ran and played in Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest games, this was a little bit more on the RuneQuest side of the difficulty scale than the Call of Cthulhu. RuneQuest had a lot of complications with the way that their magic system worked and the way that their character creation process worked. This reminded me a little bit of that. But I think the reward with this one was a little bit better. I felt like I ended up with something that I was more comfortable with and that I liked a lot more when I got through the process with this. So, not hard to play, but a little bit hard to learn. Summary. Against the Darkmaster is a true throwback game. When I was a kid, half the RPGs on the shelf of my local Walden books were like this game. Full of tables, metal aesthetic, and aimed at the math nerds. I love those, and I love this. The level of detail that is organic to the execution of actions in a Darkmaster goes a long way towards narrating a combat and its gritty results. This system, with the right group, could be great for playing out Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, Conan, or the Song of Ice and Fire stories, as well as a much drearier take on Tolkien or the Chronicles of the Lance. If you don't like flipping pages or referencing charts, steer clear. But if you're okay with that, give this game a look and see if your group has what it takes to go against the Darkmaster. Legendary D20 members. Look at these absolute legends. Keith Simone, Dengar the Mighty, Jolt, Blue Rose Lion, Mike the Hammer, and Chris Stray. Special thanks to Chris Grodzicki, I Am Not Tim, and Acine Dean. Coming soon. We have some great content on the way with games like Black Sword Hack, Black Powder and Brimstone, and Sword Chronicle to cover. Not to mention the videos on the White Box supplements, the Suede Companions, and the different solo plays on the back burner. My question to you is, what do you want to see next? Until next time, this is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless.